Welcome to SIGGRAPH 2021 and our session today, Through the Looking Glass, the next reality for content production. I'm Eric Iverson, CTO for Media and Entertainment at AWS. First of all, I want to thank all of you for joining us today. It's truly an honor to be with you. For the next 45 minutes, we want to take you on a content creation technology tour, and we could not be more excited about sharing some thoughts with a few tremendous special guests. But before we start, I want to take just one moment to talk about AWS for Media and Entertainment, so you know how this conversation fits into our thinking. At AWS, we are focused on 5 key solution areas for our customers to help them create stories and share those stories everywhere in the world. Those solution areas are media supply chain, broadcast, direct-to-consumer and streaming, data science and analytics for media, and of course, this topic today, content production, where the entertainment experience all begins. And speaking of beginnings, today we are going to start our journey with a look back to the beginnings of computer graphics and see how the past can give us a glimpse of the future. So our story starts back in the decade SIGGRAPH was born. Our journey starts in the 1970s. And some of you may say, the 1970s, was computer-generated content even a thing? Well, in the 1970s, we saw Ed Catmull and Fred Parke create the first computer-animated hand. The uncanny valley phrase was coined by Masahiro Mori. Atari released Pong. John Meads and Bob Schiffman organized the first SIGGRAPH conference. Martin Newell creates the teapot using Bezier control points. Hollywood releases films like Star Wars with visual effects by ILM, Close Encounters of a Third Kind, and Superman demonstrates the first fully CG title sequence with the now famous John Williams playing in the background, and you have to admit, that was pretty cool. But something profound had changed. A 3D hand was animated. And once it was, there was no going back. Computer-generated content became a thing. Which brings us to the 1980s, when the promise of game consoles began to seem real. But would arcade games and computers bring computer graphics into your living room? Nah, that'll never be a thing. But then we saw Silicon Graphics Inc. founded, SGI Machines released, Adobe Systems Incorporated, and Autodesk was founded. The internet was born. Photoshop was written by Thomas and John Knoll and was initially used for the film The Abyss with visual effects by ILM. And speaking of film, the movie Tron mixed live action with computer graphic imagery in the story. Star Wars Episode V, Empire Strikes Back was released. And in the home, the Commodore 64 was released. The Nintendo Entertainment System revealed, and the first Macintosh computer was sold by Apple. And again, something had changed. When Nintendo released their gaming system alongside Atari's growing popularity, in-home gaming became mainstream. Apple's introduction of the Macintosh brought computer graphics into your home and mine. At this point, computer graphics experiences have permanently entered people's homes. It was a thing, and there was no going back. Entering the 1990s, while some progress was being made on computer graphics for production, skeptics still said, purpose-built computers for computer graphics production? Nah, that'll never be a thing. Then, in the 1990s, we saw Epic Games release Unreal Engine, Linus Torvalds release Linux. The World Wide Web was unleashed on the public. Discrete Logic released Inferno, which sold for over $700,000. SGI becomes the popular choice for graphics workstation and released a wide product slate. Our industry pushed new limits with films such as Terminator 2, Judgment Day, the first blockbuster to use a personal computer for major 3D effects. Toy Story, which was produced by Pixar Animation Studios, delighted audiences everywhere. Pixar, which was founded by Apple's Steve Jobs, turned to Ed Catmull as its chief technology officer. And what did we see? We saw the hand and the teapot make its way into our homes. Once again, something had changed. When SGI introduced a series of workstations built specifically for computer graphics for creatives, those creatives realized the power of those specialized tools in film. It became a thing. In the 2000s, we were hard at work with our fancy high-end tools, dreaming about what was next. Would professional computer graphics work move to personal computers? Nah, that'll never be a thing. Then, in the 2000s, we saw Apple release the Mac Pro. Autodesk Maya is ported to Linux, Mac OS X, and Microsoft Windows. We see improved 3D capabilities in PCs, and as a result, silicon graphics market share for graphics workstations dramatically decreased. And in 2006, with the internet and World Wide Web well established, AWS becomes pioneers in the cloud. In theaters, we were dazzled with Avatar, which we used real-time rendering on set. Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Rings, introduced AI into film to create massive battle sequences. And again, something changed. Advances in silicon technology and enhanced 3D capabilities enabled PCs to vastly increase their compute abilities, and did so at a relatively lower cost compared to the purpose-built computers that dominated the market. The personal computer had made professional graphics capabilities broadly accessible, and it was now a thing, and there was no going back. In the 2010s, with the personal PC giving us the power to deliver theatrical-grade CGI shots, we then pondered, would we use the cloud for CG content production? Nah, that'll never be a thing. Then, in the 2010s, we saw burst render workloads on the cloud. Independent data centers stood up to support animated film projects. For example, for the film Big Hero 6, Disney had to use 4 data centers, 3 in Los Angeles and 1 in San Francisco, just to finish the project. Untold Studios launches the first creative studio all in on the cloud. Unreal Engine is used by Westworld and The Mandalorian, and we saw LED panel walls, too. And in films, we saw The Jungle Book, an entirely digital movie except for the main character. Rogue One, a Star Wars story, showed us the possibility of digital reconstruction of characters. The Avengers raised the bar again, and the Marvel Cinematic Universe continued to drive VFX demand. The number of visual effects shots for the original Iron Man was approximately 1,000. But compared to the Avengers Endgame, which used nearly 2,500 visual effects shots amongst 14 different creative studios, you could see the significant increase in demand. Something had changed. The demand for CG complexity and shot volume rose dramatically, leaving studios searching for ways to create it faster in shorter amounts of time. The cloud had become a thing. Which brings us to 2020. And in 2020, something else changed. 2020 changed our mindsets. We all know what happened last year with having to find new ways to get work done remotely and separately. All of us had to rethink how we plan, shoot, edit, and finish our projects. And now, in 2021, content creators can produce content anywhere with anyone and anytime. It's a thing. Actually, it's a big thing, and there is no going back. This industry has been through a lot of change over the decades, though typically changes have occurred over longer periods of time. It wasn't long ago where people said entire CG pipelines in the cloud, that'll never be a thing. Changes in content production are now happening much faster. Today, not only are many studios turning to the cloud on every project, a growing number have decided to make the switch and go all in. They have moved their entire studio production to the cloud with virtual workstations, render, and storage. And they are definitely not going back. So, what trends do we see in content production right now? We see 3 big trends. First, the rise of remote production. Second, the acceleration of production pipelines to support more fresh and diverse content. And third, the need to keep costs under control. But I don't ask you to just believe me. Let's take a walk outside and talk with some of the industry experts from some of the most exciting content creation companies in the world and hear what they have to say about what's happening in content production today. Let's go. So, the first trend I'm really curious about is remote work. We are seeing more visual effects and animation projects than ever before. We hear there are not enough artists to keep pace. It seems that hiring is more difficult and competitive than it's ever been. But is there a real opportunity in remote work? Could it be that new techniques in remote production could lead to a more inclusive world, more inclusive storytelling, and better opportunities for artists? Let's talk with a couple good friends of mine at Netflix and see what they have to say. Laura.
Oh my
Raul.
goodness.
Hey.
Oh my gosh, it's so good to see you.
Likewise.
It's good to see you. Hey, do you mind if I ask you a couple questions?
Yeah.
I am really curious about how remote production has changed our industry over the last year. And you've been doing so much work in this space over the last year. One of the things I'm really curious about, Laura, is how has storytelling in the last year changed because of remote production? Has that changed your ability to be able to tell stories in the way you want to tell them at Netflix?
It's a really great question, Eric. I mean, first things first, we have to acknowledge the last year and a half that the pandemic that we've been in. And when you think about what everybody's doing is they're working collaboratively across the globe. And so when you think about what is authentic storytelling, it truly is imagination. It's about how can you take imagination from you, me, somebody in Brazil, somebody in Africa, and build a story around it. In order to do that, you need talent who represent that authentic storytelling. You need artists who can represent that storytelling. And so you want to bring all of that talent onto the same production. Previously there was almost no way to do that, but in today's world and the pandemic pushing forward the global production workforce, we can now do that, and that's definitely where we should lean in.
I love it. So if you're able to reach authentic storytellers where they are, you're saying that actually helps us with authentic stories.
That's right, absolutely. What another way to look at it is that imagination is the creativity that's needed to have really, really great content. And our users at Netflix, if you think about some of our shows like Storybots is a fully remote production, and they do really great storytelling for...
Very imaginative.
Oh, I love Storybots. And we have new shows that I'll tell you about, like Maya and the Three, although you can't tell anybody because it's not yet on service. It's such an authentic, beautiful story. And so I can't wait for that to come to service. And so working with Rahul, on our studio product innovation team, we're really looking at how to lean into that collaboration and finding talent across the globe.
Oh, I love that. Can we have a watch party for that when it comes out?
You got it. We're going to party.
All right, good. So Rahul, this seems like it's required a lot of work to make this happen. How did you make this all happen in such a short period of time?
Well, we've been working on it for a while, but as Laura said, it's all about connecting to the right talent, the right artist, wherever they are in the world, and that's required, to get really great content made. So we have a cloud-based content pipeline that is actually deployed in 4 continents today across 35 productions.
Wow.
Including such big hits such as La Casa de Papel out of Spain and Selena out of Mexico. And then we have a very robust platform called NetFX for our visual effects artists. As you all know, visual effects are an increasing part of every production that we have. And so we have a NetFX platform operating out of Montreal, out of Vancouver, out of Mumbai. And again, it's about finding that right artist wherever they are and having them work on our production, because that's how we get the best and most imaginative content made.
Oh, I love that. So tell me a little bit more about NetFX. What exactly does it do?
So NetFX is a content-based pipeline that provides the right infrastructure and the best infrastructure to that artist who happens to be in Brazil, right? Or happens to be in Czechoslovakia. But, with this cloud-based pipeline, we are able to deploy it at scale to anywhere in the world. And that's incredibly powerful for the artist, and then it translates into great content for us.
I love it. Laura, does that make you happy? It seems like this is the way to get our authentic storytellers and stories to get made. Is that right?
Yeah, super excited about the future and just leaning into this global collaboration effort. And so it definitely makes us happy.
I love it. Is this here to stay? Are we going to continue to do this? Maybe I should call it global production.
I love that. Yes, the global production is here to stay, and companies who don't lean into it, they're just going to be left behind, because you're going to want to be authentic with your stories. You're going to want to have authentic creativity and the imagination from around the world.
Right. No bounds to the imagination.
No bounds.
Rahul, is this here to stay?
It is here to stay. We are going to have global productions, and we are going to have global collaboration across productions.
Fantastic. Well, I just love the work that you're doing. Thank you both so much for sharing some of your thoughts today. Really appreciate it. And we're definitely going to do the watch party.
You got it.
I can't wait to see some more of those stories coming out from Netflix.
You got it.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Eric.
Thank you, Eric.
Wow. That was incredible hearing the kind of progress that Netflix has been making. With all of that authentic storytelling, I know I'm going to be busy binge watching new shows, episodes, and some feature films coming from them soon. And that gets me to think, with all of that content being produced, we really need to look at our production pipelines. Is if we're going to be able to create all of this content, we're going to need to be able to do that faster than we can today. And what are we hearing? I'm hearing of some companies using the cloud, of new tools being introduced, And it sounds like we're going to need to do something like this to accelerate content pipeline so that we could be able to create more fresh and diverse content faster. It makes me think I would really like to talk to someone from an industry innovator, someone like Wedded Digital. Prem, hey!
Funny running into you.
Yeah, so good to see you.
Yeah, nice
oh
to
my
see
gosh,
you.
do you have a few minutes?
I do.
Great, I'd love to talk with you. I'm really curious. What we're hearing right now is that it seems like there's just incredible content being created.
Oh yeah.
Like Wedded Digital.
Of course.
Right, and so what I'm wondering is, how are you seeing this creating like an incredible demand for new kind of content coming out? Are you busy?
Oh my God, we are more busy than we've ever been before. We're seeing the demand curve way outpace the supply curve right now. And it's really because of all these amazing direct-to-consumer platforms and also studios just driving up demand for our services. So we needed to really look and reinvent how we're doing things.
Wow, how much do you think it's going to increase here in the future?
It's without question, the secular growth trend is in the double digits every year. CAGR is about 12% a year for the next 5 years at least.
Wow. So,
and I don't see it slowing down.
All right, we have a lot to do. Okay.
We got a lot to do. We got a lot of TV to watch.
All right, but we have a lot of TV to make. So
That's
how
right.
are we going to do it? So how are we going about accelerating some of these production pipelines to actually meet all this demand?
We need to do two things in a quick hurry. Number one, we need to empower more artists than there are today in the world. And we're already pushing up against the global resources today. And number two is that we need infinite compute power. We need to be able to unplug or transition from our local render facilities up into the cloud. Maybe you can help me with that.
Yeah, we would love to. We would love to help you with
Exactly.
that. In fact, I think we already are.
I think we are, exactly.
So let's drill into the tool side. So cloud is awesome. What's running on the cloud is also awesome.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about some of the tools that you're employing that is going to have an impact on some of the artists.
Well, when we look at tool development, we're thinking about how do we decrease time and increase creativity and increase the artistry of what the artist is supposed to do. Not the 70% rudimentary work they're doing, but the 30% that's gold.
I think we could all get behind that.
Absolutely, right? And so one way is actually we looked at trees and forestry, and so many parts of our films that use that in the background. And instead of modeling out each and every tree and shrubbery, is there a different way to look at this? And we use software to solve that, and we actually created a tree growth software.
Tree growth software.
Literally growing.
So you're
trees.
farmers now.
We're farmers now, exactly.
Oh my
and
gosh.
the good news is we have absolutely no constraints on that, and we can grow any tree, any shrubbery, any species anywhere in the world.
Wow. Well, I love trees. I'm a tree hugger. I love forests.
So do
Can
I.
we see that? I want to see this.
You got to see it. Seeing is believing. Let me turn this TV on over here so I can show you.
All right. Oh my God. So what are we seeing?
We're seeing actually our computer program, actually you're putting in inputs such as what's the species, what's the position on Earth, what's the latitude and longitude, because we take into all those environmental concerns and actually procedurally grow the forest based on that, based on all the season changes and everything. So that as you notice, the trees look differently, in other parts of the world. This platform takes all that into account.
Wow, I love that. So next time we'll just grow the park.
Exactly, we'll do that next time.
This is an awesome plan.
For next SIGGRAPH, we'll do it.
All right, sounds good. So what are some of the other tools? I hear maybe you're doing some really great work with Autodesk.
We're doing amazing work. We just announced Weta M, which is Weta Maya, that we're actually integrating a bunch of our award-winning tools. We've won 13 Academy Awards and SciTech Awards for our tools. We're integrating that with Maya for the very first time and releasing that as a commercial product.
I love that. Are you going to talk about that anymore during SIGGRAPH?
A little bit more. I have a fireside chat with Autodesk, and that's going to be coming up.
All right. Well, I'm not going to miss that.
Okay.
That sounds like that's going to be a good.
It's really going to be fun.
All right. Fantastic. What are some of the projects, the film projects, if we were kind of thinking about, wow, I saw the growing of the forest. What are some film projects that you've done that actually employ some of these tools?
Well, absolutely. Like for the tree growth, for example, was Planet of the Apes. We've seen those great forestries and those great shots of the apes. Those are all grown by this platform.
Oh, wow. I love it. How about if we take a look forward?
Yeah.
We take a look forward. Every once in a while, we see a moment. There's kind of a milestone moment, a new innovation that happens.
Yeah.
Everyone says, wow. And then it changes the industry. And then over the next decade, you see that actually become mainstream.
Yeah.
Do you have any examples of that in kind of Weta's history? And then is there any maybe more recent examples as well?
It's a great question. The good news about Weta is that it's been groundbreaking from the beginning.
So you just keep doing it over and over?
We just kind of keep doing it.
All right, give me a good example. How about that?
Exactly. Well, it really starts with, of course, the foundation of the company, which is, of course, Sir Peter Jackson and Dame Fran Walsh. They wanted to create visuals that no one else has seen before. They created tools that no one else had before. And that really goes back all the way to Gollum, of course.
That was an amazing character.
It's hard to believe. Go back and look at that, that movie today. It still holds up today, 20 years later. And you look at that photorealistic, that's our dedication, our faithfulness to a photoreal environment at Weta. And we got the best compliments in the world from Hollywood, where people called up and said, hey, where'd you get the little guy, for that film? And they didn't realize that it was completely mocap.
Wow, I can see the face and hear the voice in my head right now as you're talking.
Totally. Fast forward to today,
Yeah.
we're doing advanced digital humans, which we did in Gemini Man, where we created a 23-year-old fully digital double of Will Smith chasing after current day Will Smith to kill him.
Wow. Maybe you could help me out. I'd love to create a 23-year-old version of me.
Let's both have it. Yeah,
All right,
but they'll
let's
be
do that.
friends. They'll be friends with us. We can just hang out.
I love that. Prem, amazing
Eric.
work. I'm super excited about that. Thank you so much for joining us and telling us a little bit more about how to make production go faster and make artists' lives better. I love that. Sounds like you're making really great progress.
We
towards
really
some of
are.
this.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks.
Great seeing you.
All right. Take care. What an incredible story by Wedded Digital. I could absolutely see with new tools and techniques like this, we can make artists' lives much better, letting artists be artists and not spending time on drudgery. That's something I think that we all can stand behind. Coming up next, all of this makes me think of one thing. If we're going to be doing a lot of film projects and using a lot of compute and a lot of new tools, cost is going to be something that we're going to need to keep under control for sure. We're not going to be able to fulfill all the demand of all of our film projects unless we use our tools efficiently. So with that, that makes me think of how do we use things like the cloud and be able to have more predictable infrastructure where we can turn things on and off and make sure that we're using all of the tools that we have as efficiently as possible. That makes me think, you know what? Let's see if we can find out who in the industry has really done that well. And the company that comes to mind is Company 3. And they've done some really great work. You know who I think we need to talk to? Is Robert. Hey, Robert. Hey, so good to see you here in the park, in the bush. We're so glad you joined us here today. I have a couple questions for you. Company 3 has done some tremendous work in the cloud. And I'm really curious, what were some of the cost factors that drove you down this path?
Thanks, Eric. I was looking for a way to compete. I started investigating cloud-based workflows in 2011. Since then, the technology has really matured at that point, allowing us to be able to compete on every level. CapEx has always been a hindrance to how and when we grow, but using AWS allows us to scale up from a few users to hundreds of users and thousands of rendered nodes, so basically in a moment's notice, and be able to complete the needs of our clients at no matter when, how, and globally on that basis.
That's really interesting. One of the questions I have is we see some of our customers really needing this kind of cost transparency and cost predictability in some of the work that they do. Do you have some examples of that from Company 3?
Absolutely. Powerhouse, they have a separate session where they'll go into more details, but they went from mid 6 digits in monthly business to low 7 digits in monthly business. And from 25 over to 65 artists just in a few months migrating to the cloud-based workflows. And it's really helped them optimize their business and be able to have a deterministic way of how to produce work, meet work, find work, and be able to tackle any size project that they need to based on the talent that they have, knowing that they can scale up their artists and their rendering and compute powers as necessary, and then turn it off when it's not necessary, which really helps on the CapEx and OpEx models that you have out there, and drives everything to more of an OpEx model, which makes that job deterministic in value for them and also deterministic in what their costs will be.
I love that. And that Powerhouse SIGGRAPH session is going to be fantastic. I definitely want to see it. So with this kind of cost control in hand and this kind of predictability, how has that impacted your business? And maybe better yet, how's that been good for artists?
Thanks, Eric. You know that I view my job as making infrastructure as transparent as possible to artists. It's really the less they see of what we do from a technology point of view, the more completely seamless we make the infrastructure, whether they're working on-prem or off-prem. It allows them to scale up and say, I need an extra 1,000 render nodes at this time to be able to complete this job, or 300 render nodes, or 10 render nodes, and be able to turn them on at one time. Really gives us the flexibility as technologists to supply them with the ability to make everything seamless, transparent as possible, and they really have and to allow them to spend all their time being creative. And that's really what this is about. My mind is really just in seeing that joy and that creativeness that comes out of them when they create the content for our clients and not knowing where that compute is coming from. That's really what I feel is a great part of this industry to do this.
Robert, I love that. All right, one last question for you. With artists being able to have more flexibility and being able to work in the cloud and you having more predictability in your costs, what do we see next from Company 3?
Thanks, Eric. Compute from anywhere, that really builds on what I mentioned before about seamless and transparency, but it allows us to reach out to around the globe to have creative artists work together in our environment. No matter where they are, we can scale up to the type of computers they want to, the type of resources they want to, and they can all collaborate on one project at a time. It really is the culmination of bringing the top talent from around the globe and the best compute power and the scalable the scalable solutions that we have out there, the scalable infrastructure that we have at AWS, and marry the two together and build the best content there is in the world for our clients. And that's really what I see the benefits of having in this environment where it gives us the ability to work from home, the ability to work from anywhere, have it seamless and transparent to our artists, but also the same aspect, compute from anywhere itself and scale as much as you want to. And that's really what I mean by compute from anywhere is bring the resources to the talent, not the other way around.
Robert, thank you very much for joining us here today. And next time, I hope to see you actually here in the park with me.
Thank you, Eric, and have a great day and have a great SIGGRAPH.
Moving to the cloud can be enticing. And we know that it also can be very hard. Change is hard. These three trends have encouraged creatives to want to move workloads to the clouds. The trouble is that creatives typically are not IT administrators or software developers. So we know this. We hear this from customers. And we are working harder to make it better and easier to move production into the cloud. As a result, you see us at AWS making investments in technology. And I can think of the perfect person for us to have this conversation with about how do we make it easier to set up production pipelines in the cloud. And that is Rex Grignon from Amazon Nimble Studio. Rex! Hey!
Hey, fancy meeting
Great
you
to
here.
see you.
Nice to
Great
see
to see you.
Nice to see you.
Hey, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah.
Hey, a question for you. First of all, I'm curious. What is Nimble Studio?
Get asked that a lot. Well, Nimble Studio is a service at AWS that helps animation and visual effects and other creative studios move, some of their work to the cloud so that they can connect with artists all around the world.
Well, that sounds like a very ambitious project. So where did you come up with a big idea like that? That seems like quite the dream.
Funny you should ask. It was in a park very much like this. In Mountain View. Yeah.
Well, I like that. Well, do you want to have a seat?
Yeah, sure.
So Rex, tell me a little bit more. When you sat on this bench and you were looking forward, what were you talking about? What is it that you wanted to do? Who is it that you wanted to help?
Well, I think we saw this opportunity where we saw every studio and every university that wanted to teach animation or studio that wanted to create animation, first thing they had to do was build a pipeline. So we thought, if we could build a pipeline once the right way and put it in the cloud, then in theory anybody could use that. So that was kind of the founding sort of vision. Could we put a infrastructure and pipeline in the cloud so artists could live wherever they want to live and work on cool projects, if they're living out in Minnesota or Bulgaria or wherever. So.
Oh, I like that. So it sounds like sometimes artists have to get moved from location to location.
Yeah.
That's got to be hard on families, I would think.
Yeah, that was one of the big things is we saw studios when they finish a production, downsize their crew. And so we saw artists and have to move their families around to follow the work around, move to England or Australia or whatever. So we thought, this could actually help solve that for both sides of that equation, for studios and for artists. So it's like, this seems like a good idea.
That seems like a big idea. So instead of taking the artist to the work,
right.
Why don't we take production to the artist?
Yeah, and let artists connect from, all around the world.
I love that. Okay, so you sat on this bench.
Yeah.
And that was not the first moment you had thought about this. You've been thinking about this for a little while. So what was the backstory? What got you to this bench?
Yeah, so I had worked in the industry, and I'd sort of seen that I could access my big powerful computer up in my office from one of the training rooms, and it was kind of like this light bulb moment for me. It's like I don't need a computer right under my desk to be able to to work on a powerful computer. So that was the first thing, and then we started learning about some of the things that some of the cloud companies were doing, and about these pieces started falling that would make this possible, this vision possible.
I got it. So you're thinking like, hey, if I could do this, across the building, then maybe I could do it across the campus, and maybe I could do it across.
And if you can run one application, which is great, maybe you could run two, and maybe you could pass the data between them. So all of a sudden, the pieces started coming together. Yeah.
Oh, I like that. So that brought you to this bench.
Yeah.
What happened next?
Well, we talked about, what would be involved in this, because if you're going to start a business, it has to be a business. So we started thinking about how would we structure this business? What would the customer really want out of a service like this? And so we, put our heads together on the business front, on the technology front, and on the creativity front. And, we wanted to come up with a real driving vision that would allow all of us to leave our day jobs and really commit to this. And we finally got to that point where we all linked arms and jumped in. So.
You did it. Yeah, so great. So and then at some point, Amazon and Nimble.
Yeah. So we ran Nimble Studio as a startup for a few years and really worked on building this pipeline. And we did some short films with some filmmakers. And we met up with some folks at AWS, and in 2019 we were acquired into AWS. And so the team came over, and we're, it's just wonderful being, part of such an incredible company with this, worldwide reach and huge aspirations to help customers and artists. So, yeah, it's wonderful.
I love that. Tell me just a second about making films. So you made actually some films with some of the tools that you were making. Was that an important part of the process?
Yeah, it really was. We did what we called a pilot program. As a startup, we made 5 short films with 5 first-time directors and about 120 artists scattered all over North America. And we really wanted to learn what the challenges were with doing remote collaboration like that. So we learned a ton, of course, and we put that right into the product. And I think really the goal there was, how can we make this process, have less friction? How can we make this more creative? That was mostly the driving sort of voice was, how can we make this more creative? How can we let the technology, this incredible technology, be there, but not necessarily be in the artist's face all the time? So.
Ooh, I like that concept. So that sounds like that must be top of mind for you today. Is that one of the things? How do we make the technology kind of evaporate for the artist so that the artist can focus on, creating wonderfully entertaining content?
That's exactly it. But, at the same time, studios want to be able to customize and want to be able to get in. So we need to allow access to under the hood.
There's a little more to it in the studio setting.
But what you don't want, you want artists to be able to get together and start a studio ultimately without having to first be a technology company. That's really the goal.
No, I love it. So pretty soon you'll have to do that in the park. We get a couple.
Exactly.
We'll have to get that on film, I think.
Exactly.
So that's great. So this idea about being more simple. What are some of the biggest challenges? How hard are you working at that right now?
Well, very hard. I mean, I think we really try to understand what the customer needs and wants first, and then we work backwards from that. So we say, what does a customer really want from something like this? What are they afraid of? What are they excited about? And we try to put that into the design of the product. Yeah. Oh,
man, I love that. So, I know with a lot of projects I've worked on, and I think you've worked on, that you do a lot of work internally. And I think there's a lot of services that it takes to actually make Nimble work.
Yeah. I mean, I think at first we didn't understand. We were initially born on AWS, and Nimble Studio, I think, integrates about 50 different AWS services under the hood. And the idea is we don't want a customer studio have to deal with all of those separately. It can get quite complicated. So we want to put those together in a way that makes a lot of sense and allows them to get up and running quicker. So
I love that. So that's the internal.
Yeah.
How about external? Like where do you feel like that you're working as a group to help that interoperability at the industry level?
Yeah, well, a big part of it is just helping people feel safe moving to the cloud, that this is a real thing, that it's secure, and that there's a real benefit for the company. So it's going to take a lot of different components working together to get this. We're one part of that, but everybody needs to feel this vision. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
One of the things I know at Amazon is we love open source. We love open source communities. We participate in communities. DEI is very important to us, and those are important communities as well. Tell me a little bit about how, in the visual effects and animation parts of your work, where are you working with some, let's say, external associations and groups?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, I'm probably not the best one to talk about this stuff, so I think you should talk with Haley. I think she'd probably be the best one, yeah.
Yeah, great.
I think she's around here. Haley. Oh, there she is.
Haley.
This is Haley Cannell. She works at
great
Nimble
to see you
Studio.
again.
Hi,
Nice to
good
see you. How you doing?
Haley's amazing.
Hey.
Yeah, hey, great to
How's it
see you.
going?
So I think you two should talk about this stuff, and I'm going to skip out and go get some lunch. So
Great.
Perfect.
All right.
Hey, so
Nice
good to see you.
See
All right, take care. Haley, so good to
Hi.
see you.
Thanks for
Here,
having
have a
me.
seat. Have a seat. So question. So Rex and I were just talking,
Yeah.
and one of the things that we were talking about is all of this hard work that goes into making software interoperable and making it easier to work. But at least it's been my experience that often to solve some of the big industry problems, we actually have to solve those at an industry level, working together with other thought leaders out there. I'm guessing that you're doing some of that work today. What are some of the industry groups that you're working with now?
Yeah, so AWS is working really hard with our customers and with our partners to engage with a lot of these communities to push the industry forward. So some of the groups that we're currently working with are Blender, the Academy Software Foundation, and Women in Animation. And by working with these groups, we're really putting our support behind open source and making the industry more inclusive for everyone.
I love that. So let's talk. Tell me about Blender. What are we doing with Blender?
Yeah, so AWS is a patron member of the Blender Development Fund, and the fund supports the continued development of Blender. And for those who don't know, Blender is a open source 3D animation application, and we feel it's really important to support open source as well as commercial tools in the industry. I know personally for me, like a lot of the early films that I worked on during my career were done almost entirely in Blender. And when I talk to people who are looking to learn 3D animation, I'll oftentimes recommend that they start with Blender because it's so accessible. And a lot of the development that's been put into Blender recently has put it right up there with the other standard tools in the industry.
Wow, I love that. How about ASWF? Tell me a little bit about the work we're doing there.
Yeah, so the Academy Software Foundation is an initiative that was founded by the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences and the Linux Foundation. So the goal behind ASWF is to increase the contributions and to the open source software base of the film industry. And they're really setting up a clear path for those who have a vested interest in using open source software to then also contribute back to that software base. And AWS became a member company because we believe in that mission. We bring a lot of open source expertise as well as knowledge in media and entertainment, especially when it comes to render management, content creation tools, and cloud-based workflows.
I love that. And I know some of our partners, it's not just us that cares about open source.
Yeah.
Some of our dearest partners also are ASWF members and are contributors. Who are some of the other really excellent partners that we get to work with through there?
Yeah, we're a member company right there alongside companies like Autodesk, Adobe, Epic Games, NVIDIA, Intel, AMD. I mean, we're a really good company when it comes to the other member companies of Academy Software Foundation.
Yeah, that sounds like a strong community.
Yeah.
Okay, so rumor has it that you have a pretty exciting announcement that you're ready to make. I promise I won't tell anyone. But what is it that we're looking to get involved in?
So AWS is going to be a corporate member of Women in Animation, which I'm really excited about. I am personally involved in that organization. I'm part of the leadership team of the Bay Area chapter. And yeah, it's really exciting that we're going to be partnering with them and working towards their mission of creating more equity in the animation industry.
That's great. And I'm sure that you're going to agree with this, and I'm sure everyone that's watching is going to agree with this, but nothing could be better than actually getting some more really amazing women into this industry to help there. And it sounds like it's really made a difference.
Yeah, it really is. And, the goal is to get more women and other people in underrepresented gender identity communities to have decision-making roles within the studios and other companies within the animation industry. Because, if you're in those decision-making roles, you can make real meaningful change and just make sure that these companies are cultivating inclusive environments where anyone has the opportunity to succeed.
I love it. Haley, thanks so much for coming today. I really appreciate it. That. It's just really exciting
thank you
news
so much
with
for having me.
women in animation. What a great announcement.
Yeah, thanks so much.
That's great.
Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, you too.
All right,
see you
I'll
around. Well, I don't know about you, but those have been some tremendous conversations that we've had today. But I just feel like something's missing. I feel like there's one more trend that we're not talking about. What about virtual production? I would love to talk with some experts from maybe Epic Games and, let's say, Amazon Studios about virtual production. David, Ken.
Hey.
Just the two people I needed to talk to. Great to see you.
Good to see you,
Hey,
man.
great to see you. So I wanted to have a quick conversation about virtual production. So this seems to be a pretty big trend, but maybe before we start, Ken, virtual production. That means a lot of things to a lot of people right now. What does virtual production mean to you?
It's creating technologies that help filmmakers tell stories. So it's everything that has traditionally been done and enhancing all of those techniques to help us and help the filmmakers even be better at their jobs and make it an easier process and a more collaborative process.
Oh, I love that. Where are some of the areas that, in particular, that's coming to life in productions right now?
A lot of it is remote collaboration. So along with the pandemic, it's been very difficult for people to gather together. So what this has done, virtual production has done, has given the ability for people to, wherever they are in the world, be able to meet and do the tasks that they normally do where they had to do it together. So for example, virtual location scouting. Before it was location scouting, you all had to get in a van. Well, first, all had to travel to a town. You have hotel, transpo, and then you had to go out to the locations in a van and drive from location to location. Now, you don't have to go anywhere but your living room. You have people that go out, small teams that go out and scout, bring the locations to the cloud, and then now we can all get together and jump into sessions and start pointing at the different locations that were captured.
Oh, I love that. So David, when we say the words virtual production, the next word that often rolls off our tongue is Epic Games, Unreal Engine. Right. So what is it that you're seeing with some of the customers of your product, and how are you seeing virtual production working right now in the industry?
Yep, virtual production, has been around for a while, and dating back to the days of Jim Cameron and Robert Zemeckis way back when they set the stage for doing this. But virtual production is really simple to understand when you see it as production using real-time tools, using real-time computer graphic tools. And as Ken was saying, it applies to anybody essentially doing a movie. Every department has a use for these virtual tools to supplement what they're doing in the real world in a way to be able to add to a real set, a virtual set, or to be able to add into previs a whole series of tests and the location scouting up all the way out to visual effects and finishing. You can use real-time tools, and that's what virtual production is.
I love that. So it's really in the whole life cycle, is what both of you have said. What are some of the specific tools, techniques that you found are really helpful, the ones that you're looking at right now?
For virtual production, I think that remote collaboration, like I said before, isn't just, I gave the example of virtual location scouting, but it's all the visualizations in between too. From the beginning of movie making, we use storyboards to kind of plan out our story. Now, then we've taken those storyboards, with the advent of the computer, brought it in, started making animatics. Then it became pre-visualization, to where we can now see characters and backgrounds and effects all come to life and be able to make real-time decisions, like David was talking about. But on top of that, now we can start tech vizzing, which is just figuring out all the different elements that need to go into a shot. So breaking that out, making it easier to consume. So you can see that as we move forward, now we start getting into real time where the director can now get involved with it. It's constantly evolving where now the real time aspect of it is that you're not only making real time pre-visualization with actors in motion capture suits, you're also giving the director real-time decision potential to be able to see it and make decisions and blocking decisions in real time. So this is huge in terms of the spark of creation is now given back to the filmmakers. And we look at every single filmmaker all the way down the line and look to see how to make their job better.
Oh, I love that. David, I bet you brought up the real time. I bet you're seeing that right now with some artists that you've been working with.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there was this phase of the motion picture and television industry where visual effects really grew for many years and showed the way of what you can put on screen now that doesn't exist, right? But at first, computers were slow, and it was all done in a back room, and you didn't see it when you were shooting it. Or even when you were planning in the beginning, you had no idea. So you had to be this sort of intellectual director, right? I'm sure that you met many that had, like Steven Spielberg, able to see it all in his head and then plan it and tell other people what to do. But it's not the average director. And now with the advance of technology and our tools coming up and the investment that we've been doing, all along the way, there were steps of trying to be real time. Jim Cameron on the first Avatar did the absolute best he could with the technology of the time to be real time. But it was expensive and it was custom and it was only a few could afford this. But now that's why we invested along the way, many of us working in different companies and now into real-time technology to bring that to bear and so that we can have a free tool essentially available for artists and being able to work this way. And in their home, using, basic computer hardware and in the cloud to be able to use technology that decouples your local hardware and that you can then start working together. And then, of course, we had the pandemic that nobody wanted or planned for, but that forced us to be more collaborative in a remote kind of way and to be, we couldn't go to location as much, right? We couldn't put people in planes, go anywhere. And so we were just kind of ready, not by any form of planning, but we had the tools ready so that people could collaborate and work together. And then, of course, with the power of the cloud and the Amazon tools, that now you can bring that collaboration together, and it's a new era.
Oh, I love that. Now, you mentioned that we've been doing some of this virtual production work for a while. But a lot of us started seeing this and became really popularized with The Mandalorian. What's changed here in just the last 5 years? What's different today?
The immediacy, the real time, was not even present before. So in the last 5 years, what we're seeing on set is, with the frustum, being able to have the proper perspective matched to the practical camera in real time. That's the technology had to catch up with the desire to do so. So the freedom that filmmakers have right now has never been so freeing. Before, they were always shackled to their technology. They tried to shoot in certain ways and you'd get frame bumps, you couldn't keep up with, you'd get ripping, different types of things that are happening in your background. Now it's all real time and there's ways around it, there's backup systems. And so it's a very more robust system. It's less R&D, it's more production. And like David said, it's now for the masses. So these technologies are now out that from indie all the way to AAA majors can get the software for free, and it's a very low barrier to entry.
Thank you, David, for that, by the way.
Yes,
It's not just me.
It's incredible software. Incredible
It's a
software.
team.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the whole team, for sure. If you fast forwarded a year, SIGGRAPH 2022, what would you see? What would you expect the audience to see between now and SIGGRAPH 2022?
It's hard to predict because we're in an adoption cycle, right? And so the tools are out there, but they're not too many people know how to use them yet. There's a lot of, it can be picked up, people can use them, but how to use them and how to insert them in your creative process, this is in the making right now. So in a year, I think we're going to see a lot more adoption, a lot more people using the tools in the cloud, and we're going to who knows what we're going to see creatively. It's a completely new phase.
Oh, it's pretty exciting. What do you think?
I agree completely, and I want to go further in the sense that up until this point, it's been the very technophilic, the directors and filmmakers that love technology that have gotten into this space. What we need to happen in the next year is the education, but also the ease, meaning that people who don't even know what virtual production is able to pick up a tool and intuitively understand how it works, because it's still filmmaking, and we want to make it accessible to people who aren't technical savvy people. They're just really good filmmakers who don't have the computer graphics experience or the game technology experience. They just have the film cinematic experience and can take those skill sets and use them 30 years of cinematography without having to deal with how a virtual camera works is very powerful to a lot of DPs. So, and then you just go down the call sheet. Everybody that can walk on a set and see what it looks like instead of walking to a sea of green, they walk into the actual location that's going to be shooting. That's huge, and bring that and the ease of the technology. The technology is there and getting better. The ease of it is still a little bit behind. It's still a little bit hard to get in terms of the learning curve. And I think that that's what we'll probably get in the next year.
I got it. So adoption phase, a lot more to learn. So it sounds like what we probably should continue to encourage is everybody is to, get going with it.
Yeah.
This is the time. It sounds like it's accessible. And just the promise of that sounds amazing, to be able to walk into a space and just be able to experience what it would like to be there. All right. So David, Ken, virtual production, virtual scouting, LED panel walls. Is this going to become a thing?
I don't know. What do you think, Ken?
I think so.
I think it's going to become a thing too. Thank you guys very, very much for coming and being with us today. Really appreciate it. And thank you all for joining us today. And if you haven't figured it out by now, yes, we are in fact on an XR stage today. So first of all, great shout out to XR at 204. Really appreciate the use of this wonderful facility. ICVR with all of the great work that you're seeing behind me. Brendan Bennett Productions, thank you very much. The wonderful crew that we have here today. And lastly, I wanted to say thank you out to the SIGGRAPH conference. Everybody at SIGGRAPH 2021, have a great show.